Hello and welcome to the GenBio podcast. This is episode number 3, and I'm interviewing Jason Scharf, if I can say your name, Jason, a good friend of mine, one of the earliest people in the health ecosystem that I met here in Austin. So I'm really excited to finally actually interview with you in like a formal style. It's exciting, and I do you want to give a brief introduction of yourself, Jason?
Sure. No, it was one of the funniest things. It was just the most random like happy hour that we bumped into each other, and it was just kind of like hit it off. They were like, "Yeah, there's actually some real stuff going on here in the bio and health space." Not at that happy hour, but
No.
it was going on. Yeah. So been in the bio and health space for about 20 years at every type of company you can think of. I was at Amgen, Illumina, Becton Dickinson. So you name it, like drug device, diagnostic, consumer software, I've touched it. And then have been been an angel investor since about 2018. So kind of really getting into when I realized that I did not want to be actually a CEO and go the entrepreneurship route. I started actually investing. I was like, this catalyzing innovation, that's the fun side. And then moved to Austin in 2020 as part of the COVID wave.
Yeah, okay, so that happy hour. Well, first of all, Jason and I did this on purpose. We're wearing matching uniforms, of course. Austin Unite. It's
cold and wet outside right now.
It's cold and wet. So today I was just like, okay, it's raining. It's like more like Seattle than Austin today, and I'm just like, I'm going. And it seems that you had the same idea, just black, simple, whatever. That happy hour that you were mentioning, that was really funny because it was one of my first, we'll call it like formal events here in Austin after moving. I think it was May. I moved here April 19th, and that was like the first week of May. And I go to this event and I was like, there's just nothing interesting here. And I was on my way out of the event, and then there was someone else who was on their way out of the event going, there's just nothing interesting here. And then we talked, and that was my introduction to you. And we brainstormed about how a lot of like what's going on in Austin is just a lot of the really, really cool stuff is underneath the surface. And there are so many cool people doing really cool and disruptive things, kind of like what you were saying, where you were like, there is cool stuff here in Austin. And what you've done over the last couple of years that I've noticed is you've really brought it up to the surface with, all of your posts and your podcast, Austin Next, which always highlights some really cool stuff, but then also with all the reports that you do. So this begs the question to me that with your like awesome career in health and biotech, and I know you worked at Illumina and you've been at the cutting edge of things for a really long time in the health space. I guess, what would you say are some of the biggest changes that you've seen? And how does that reflect here in Austin?
Small question there, right?
Yeah. I mean, only...
I think maybe CRISPR was I think probably one of the big shifts, and then AI. But you call it like the engineering of biology, right? Is one way of putting it. As we kind of move to that, but I think about it as like the bioinnovation tech stack.
Okay.
Is we're moving to that. We're moving away from discovery into engineering, and that's really changing what is possible. So with CRISPR now, like cures are on the table. We have Casivigi, which I always feel like I'm pronouncing wrong, but that's the sickle cell drug from Vertex, and obviously I'm assuming your audience is very much in this space, right?
You can explain. So let me give a brief explainer of CRISPR. Just in case that somebody doesn't know what CRISPR is, it's gene editing technology, like going and editing our own code, our DNA, and making changes. And we now have therapies that exist that do this, so it's pretty cool. And
we've had gene editing technology for a long time. I mean, when you think about like Genentech and Amgen, like the biotech revolution was around genetic engineering.
Yeah.
But the key around CRISPR was it was literally cut and paste.
The precision.
Yeah, it made it so much easier, right?
Yeah.
And you can tell how important a discovery that was from two different angles. One was it was discovered, I think, in 2012. And Jennifer Doudna, her partner, which is a French name I can't pronounce ever correctly. And the guy at the Broad Institute, like they won the
Can
Nobel.
you try?
Yeah, it's like,
No, I'm just kidding.
no, I'm dude,
I'm just kidding.
but I know, well, it's obviously the person who kind of gets the most credit for it. But like, so they discovered in 2012. I think the paper came out in like 2013. I may have my dates slightly wrong. And they won the Nobel Prize in 2020. So it's like an 8-year period between the fact of discovery to Nobel Prize. Like usually it's like 10, 15, 20 years later, right? Like I think when I think about in biology, something that quick was like the discovery and the understanding of actually DNA was also like 1951, 1952, and they got it like in 1959. So,
Yeah.
and then on the other aspect is we don't, I think there's people smarter that I would maybe correct you this. We don't use like the first generation of CRISPR. We're like on Gen 3 at this point. So that's how rapidly it's moving and understanding. So one is we're really in that kind of read-write era now in DNA. And then now we're having AI come into the equation. And what happened now with, again, going back to the Nobel Prizes, right? You had AlphaFold and the people behind that win the Nobel Prize this last year.
Yeah.
And that was, the ability to really understand, do, protein folding, right? And solving the protein folding problem. So the ability to understand and manipulate and using both the biological tool set and the computing tool set, I think has really changed what is possible with the, as I call it, like the bio-innovation tech stack. But then the other side of the equation, that is just slamming into the legacy healthcare system. Because when you have things like cures, like back to like Civigy, is one of the first articles I read was Medicaid saying, I'm not sure we're going to pay for that.
Yeah.
Or there's another CRISPR-based company out there called Intellia that they had data out that was, there might be we might have a one-shot cure, and their stock tanked.
Yeah.
Like, but again, this is a good thing.
It's good.
Right. But because the current business models that we have don't understand how to do that. We know how to do chronic disease. We know how to do, those types of equations. It's like, okay, you're sick. Here's the drug.
Yeah.
Great. Pay me. Okay, that's awesome. But when we have healthcare, like the whole sick care healthcare debate.
That's what I was going to say. It's
Yeah.
a sick care system.
And that's
right?
fine. I don't knock that as a thing because we figured that out. We figured the business model out that. But the closest thing that we have to quote unquote healthcare is the gym. But the problem with that is like, okay, so you go to the gym, you pay me, but then if you don't go, my operating margins get better. That's not really a great business model for health.
None of these models really incentivize properly. The current set of markets isn't reflective of the technology, for starters, that's possible because the existing incentive structures aren't there.
Right. The closest thing that we have to a system that's actually aligned, as I've seen, is LASIK and elective plastic surgery. They've gotten cheaper over time, and they've gotten better over time because it's a purely market system.
I did LASIK.
My wife did LASIK as well, right?
Yeah.
And it got and so it's gotten better because people are able to say like, well, this is good, you're not good, price transparency, and so you have those kind of forces in play. Health is not generally as good, and then also you don't have necessarily markers in place. I've talked to a number of people who kind of are in the kind of longevity space or health optimization or those words, and I don't even know how do you measure. You're like, oh, well, you're going to live for 150 years. Like, okay, great. I'll see you in 100 years to see if it worked.
Yeah.
So there's still a little bit of the Wild West of us figuring a lot of this stuff out.
It is. It's kind of funny. So for the existing technologies to be utilizable, we need to have a better incentive structure. To have that better incentive structure, we have to disrupt the entire existing set of markets. But we get to create a whole new set of markets, right? So I think what people forget sometimes amid the fear of like you talked about stock market crashes of companies that announce cures and therapeutics and things that actually improve wellness because of you lose recurring revenue, right? I think that what we will need to see is some of the legacy payment systems diving in to be the first testers and proponents of the new set of markets that can be possible, like with AI agents and things like that for wellness. That's a new type of recurring revenue. What do you think about that?
I think we will have to. I think you're going to be just seeing lots of new experimentations, lots of new. I'm not sold on It's so hard for existing players to essentially disrupt themselves.
We've had this.
Yeah, I mean, so like, Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma the whole point of his book is like it almost never happens, right? The number of times that you are able to point to a company that disrupted itself, IBM with personal computers and mainframes, what you're seeing right now with Microsoft and AI, like that's too. Kodak is the in digital.
Okay.
That's the norm, right?
They can finance it though, so it's like I think this is more of a call to action of the wealthy individuals who are afraid that they're going to be disrupted by AI. Maybe they won't, and they realize it in the in the case of Kodak, which you gave, which is a very strong example. But if they're realizing this, then they should back the nimble, fast, agile startup companies to be being very prolifically disruptive. Like the new you talked about wellness, longevity, the gym being the closest thing. I mean, I know so many founders who are doing entire wellness and startup clinics around health span.
Right.
And prolonging health span. I was actually just at a breakfast this morning with someone doing that. His name's Rowan Jawar, and he's really cool. And the whole thing is that
there's a bunch of those happening here in Austin.
Yeah, we should there are. Austin seems to be a hub of that.
Yeah.
Truly, it's actually really cool. I think all of these models, one of these types of models is going to win.
I would agree.
Yeah, and then
actually probably a bunch are going to win. We're in the experimentation phase because I don't know which is the right model, but the fact that we're experimenting with a bunch of different ones, we'll start to see which go, and they're getting backed either by VCs, and you have a lot of large names. I mean Peter T is here, John Mackey's here doing it.
Yeah.
Jim Donnelly from Restore's got his stuff. There's a lot of definitely doing ones. So I think there's a lot of experimentation. I agree with your statement that you said a lot of the people should be doing these things.
Yeah.
I think the point that Christensen makes innovators is they don't though.
Yeah.
The incentive structure of these kind of companies. Now we'll put individuals aside for a moment. That's where some of this stuff goes. Where that they don't that is the entire dilemma. Is you want to put one more dollar into the thing that is making you money today, that is where your P&L is structured, than necessarily into the thing that will disrupt later on. And so it's it takes a certain mentality that is so unique. I give some credit. I remember seeing this DaVita, the dialysis company, where their VC arm, half of the investments they made were it was cellular therapy. These are things that if they take off, it essentially destroys their business. Yeah. So I think it was less of a, we're being disruptive, and more, at least it was look more like hedging their bets. Well, at least we'll have some upside if these things work.
I mean, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Right? That it de-risks you, right? We don't need to get into basic economic principles, but you want to de-risk your portfolio, so to speak, right? So in the case of an existing market and hedging on the possibility of one of these different models in wellness and longevity and health span working in the future, it makes sense. And you can even, like you said, back more than one and experiment, because the whole system is going to change. What do you think about
you see, there's a list that makes sense. You've got portfolio theory and efficient market frontier, but then the entire point of behavioral economics is nobody actually behaves like that. Nobody's as rational as the economic theorists say they're supposed to be. Right?
Yeah, it's true. Well, on this note, what model are you most excited about with consumer health span, wellness, longevity, preventative health? Because I'm working with the FII. On a healthy humanity initiative. I'm on a task force for that, and I'm really excited, and I'm talking to a lot of people about what they think the ideal model for preventative care is.
So
right now, actually,
what I'm excited about is the increase in experimentation.
Yeah.
I'm not at the point yet where I'm I like this model versus that model yet.
Okay.
What I'm excited about is the proliferation of models, because I haven't seen. I think I've seen a lot of things fail, I think, and there are other things. I think there are the models that I know that I'm not excited about, and there are certain classes of things that I if I get pitched one more of these things, you'll see. Anytime I do, they get steam comes out of my ears. But it's more that I think that people are realizing that it's no longer just about the widget. Like I think that's the more thing is that we've seen. I mean, if you look in other industries, right? It wasn't cloud computing that changed software. It's cloud computing plus SaaS. And I think that we're in health. We're finally getting to that realization is it's not just a 10% widget. Especially now, we're having things that are like 1,000 times better. If it's 1,000 times better, the current system doesn't know what to do with it.
Well, this is what I'm most excited about. Obviously, with my company, Generate being a like multi-omics data platform. I mean, we're doing AI for researchers, which with our product GenLab, and then we're working on our product called the BioNet, which is basically an intelligence layer centered around genome data. I'm really excited for the whole move towards prevention. Because the way that I look at it, I think that we've been looking at things in silos because of the existing system. Like even practitioners, it's like you can't just go to a doctor and look at your whole body. You go to a podiatrist, or you go to, and this is good, like to have specialization, but there's no system to kind of integrate everything together. And I think technology, not just with genome and omics data, but like with all the health data, technology and integration potential and computational capabilities, they enable this future where all the data can be looked at holistically instead of in a siloed way, which is going to actually enable functional medicine. Well,
I'm going to pull on what you said, like, where it's good to have specialization.
Yeah.
I don't think so anymore.
Oh, really?
So
explain.
We're in this era, like, and I know a lot of doctors. And feel free that people can flame me for what I'm about to say. Anybody who says, any doctor that says I keep up on the literature is lying.
Oh yeah, no. My dad's a doctor, and he's a wonderful doctor at what he does. But like, he'll be the first to say it is a nightmare. It is like hell to stay on top of the literature.
So anybody who says he's keeping up on the literature is lying. Yeah. Right. And even I remember this case. So I ran a strategy and product at a microbiome solutions company. And in the time that I was there, I remember this, like, there was a Nature article that came out and said autism is caused by odd microbiome. And then 6 months later, there was a Nature article that came out and said, nope, autism causes weird diets, which causes an odd microbiome. I'm like, okay, so clearly the answer is there's a correlation. We don't know which direction it goes.
Yeah.
But the point I was trying to make in that case is, if you don't keep up with the literature, if you happen to have read 6 months period, you would have thought it'd go one way and thought it'd go the other way. So my point in this case was, when you have such a deluge of the literature and it's constantly changing and moving around and you can't keep up on it.
Yeah.
But we now have this moment of AI and these things that are coming with you. Imagine a world of, okay, every smart doctor, we have all these great doctors, right? They have Dr. Jarvis that sits on their shoulder. And is the possibility there that is actually there to help them understand the corpus of literature, and then to tell me, okay, instead of having every doctor, like, I'm a primary care, I'm a dermatologist, I'm a gastroenterologist, I'm a neurologist, whatever, every doctor is every specialization. I'll grant you for the moment that, like, maybe surgery is its own thing and, like, there's certain things. But then, of course, intuitive might push back on that and say, like, well, robotic surgery, maybe not. Maybe every doctor could be every type of surgery. Like, that becomes, the physical side may be a different thing. But the point being is, if suddenly the entire world of knowledge is out there, and there was this, I was at an event a few months ago, and I don't have the data, so someone told me this data, but if it's true, it was really interesting, where it was a startup about mental health and increasing the pool of mental health professionals. And what this founder told me was there was data that was out there that said the number one determinant of how well a mental health professional does with an individual was, like, essentially how well they mesh, not experience level. That experience did not actually matter in that profession. And I was like, okay, one, that is a rather large indictment on the mental health professionals. But assuming that's true, like, okay, so then What would you need specialization? Just give everybody the
Yeah.
information. And then imagine in that world, every doctor doesn't even send you everywhere. They just go to you and say, here, I can help you with whatever that you need because I have all of the information at my fingertips.
Okay, so this is like one of my favorite topics with AI in general is I think a lot of people are afraid it's going to replace people, right? It will. And if you are leveraging it, you won't be the person that's replaced. Right?
No, you're right. It's the whole thing. You're not going to be replaced by AI. A person using AI is going to be the one that's going to replace you.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So it's like we can scale ourselves out now to do incredible things and give ourselves an amazing advantage with AI. And it's intimidating because new things are becoming available so quickly. But I like the idea of, AI assistance, AI extensions. Our whole evolution has been creating tools to do things more efficiently and extend ourselves. And yeah, I think in the health space, there's a lot of opportunity. My dad, for example, he's a doctor. He is an interventional radiologist. He hates reading scans. He hates it.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, like I have to sit there. I get stiff. He would rather be actually going and doing, like he does like basically microsurgeries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Using live x-ray and all kinds of stuff. He would much rather be doing that and get assistance there too than be like looking at scans all day. This is an opportunity where all the repeatable and redundant types of tasks that we don't want to do get streamlined. Right. And
this was like an old study, and my numbers are going to be off, but it was something to the effect of like it was radiology. It was like it was the humans looking at this AI, looking at scans had like a 92% accuracy rate. The AIs was like a 95, but when you put them together, it was like a 98. Something to that effect, where when you put in these things together and you do the things like AI is good at these things at scale. The humans are good at understanding like the edge cases, and it's those things together. And I think it was Peter Diamandis that said this recently, where
I met him in Saudi. He's a cool guy.
I got him when at UCSD. He came to do a talk, and I got a chance to talk. It was actually I arrived early, and so the author of the book. This was when they were doing the X Prize book, so I actually got to meet the author of that book. It was happens when you get there like 45 minutes early and just hang out. But I think it was when he said it is. It posed an interesting question: is when does it become malpractice for a doctor not to be using AI?
Yeah. I think that time is now, right? If you think about timelines, so we talked about the sick care system. Think about timelines to get a diagnosis, and then think about situations where that is critical. So cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I was recently talking to a friend of mine, or more of an acquaintance, but somebody who recently got diagnosed with cancer.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he had to push to be seen by the doctor because he had a false negative blood test. Right? And they wanted him to wait an extra 3 months to get an endoscopy. And he's like, no, I know that something's wrong. And he did. He had stage 4 cancer.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So imagine that he hadn't, like, but it's not terminal. Like, who
knows what would happen if he'd waited 3 months?
It would have become terminal most likely. Right? And I think of that case, right? Because it was like the level of, or I mean, he might have had stage 3 actually. So it's the level of metastasis that it wasn't bad enough that they think that like he has a still good prognosis, right? Well, in that case, like with metastatic cancer, I mean, a month between diagnosis can be like life or death. At that point, if you're not using AI to expedite, scale yourself, we're getting to the point where, but you can, right? We're getting to the point where we do need to ask ourselves, is that malpractice?
Right.
Right? I don't think we're there yet, but we're getting to that point because these technologies are so readily available now. It's now, and we might need to bolster that kind of urgency to get the system to change. On that note, you saw I have a California Supreme Court case. Right?
You did share that with me the other day. Yes.
I was okay. So commonality, common theme. That was when I was still in cybersecurity. Or actually, I think I was at Cisco when I went to the doctor. I can't remember which job I was at, but common theme. I got that bill, and I was just like outraged because they sent it to collections. When I was sorting things out with my insurance, the hospital sent it to collections, and I'm like, this is ridiculous, and because it was deceitful.
Right.
It's like to charge somebody 75 times the national average for anything is bad, but then like $4,000 in like egregious ER fees. I didn't even get a room. I sat in a chair. Like it was kind of crazy. And this was like my first up close experience, like financially as an adult, with some of the financial malpractice that happens in the healthcare industry. And then like I saw a thing like with the poor incentive structures and bad business models. And then like when I hear, I don't work directly with individuals who are doing a lot of healthcare reporting right now, but the industry's small. I hear of all these Ponzi schemes that shoot up. They do insurance fraud. They spin down.
Yeah.
Right. And we're getting to the point where that won't fly anymore because technologies are becoming so accessible that people are not going to, I don't think, put up with that kind of crap anymore. And so my feeling is that we might just see consumer demand force the change.
Well, so that's what I hope a lot is that. So like price transparency has been, I think, can be one of the, like the silver bullet bites, or like our LASIK and elective plastic surgery. But the problem has been, I think, we think that we can regulate it from the top. And what ends up happening a lot is that like I think those like insurance scams is due to the ability to deal with those complicated regulations. So there was like in Trump's first term, there was a price transparency bill that said like you must put pricing on on websites, and a bunch of they did with websites that had no links to them.
Yeah.
And then under in Biden they had a price transparency like you must have downloadable thing, and what was it? It was gobbledygook.
Well, that's the thing with my issue. There was some link somewhere with 25,000 prices on, like, you're in the hospital, in the ER. They don't tell you, they don't disclose. I didn't know I was going to be billed thousands of dollars for a CT scan. I thought I had appendicitis. But the emergency room fees wasn't in there, so that was what the case was for. They just charge like that. That's like almost like ransoming somebody in duress.
Right. So I think that, I mean, there might be some things with court case and receipt, but like it's when you end up having like choice. The way I always kind of put like with like the example I always give, like, okay, you want to go, I need to go get a cholesterol test, and I go to like, okay, how much is it? Well, I'm not going to tell you till afterwards. Oh, well, over here. Oh, it's $20.
Yeah.
How much are you going to give me? Oh, I'm not going to tell you. Well, I'm going to go get it for $20.
Exactly.
That's what's going to cause you to tell me how much it is, more so than some sort of regulation up on top.
Consumer demand. Although I do hope that the outcome of that, like, is something that shifts things, because, like, I don't want that to ever happen to me or anybody I care about ever again. But from the consumer-driven side, I just... I really hope that the fact that people can now go and, like, Austin being a great case, you just circling back, like, we can go to a wellness clinic. We can get the same blood tests, like you were saying.
Right.
And there's a known, like, vector on that. I hope it does force some change.
What is going to be interesting, though, and one of the concerns I have about now also on the negative side, on the wellness clinics and some of these, and it'll be interesting to see what happens, right, is... the actionability, where it kind of goes, right? Like I've always said, like, I love the data is the new oil metaphor, but not for the reason people usually say. I love it because I think about like oil sitting in a barrel is useless,
Yeah.
right? It takes refinement to actually turn it into something. Same thing with data, right? You need data to be refined into insights, into actions.
Yeah.
And so often you have the same kind of thing where it's like, well, I'm going to give you, here's data. Here, like you're going to take this wellness thing, it's like,
That-
what are you going to do with it?
you know that's like the thesis of my product. So it's like we're trying to make the data more usable and accessible, but usable, and then like drive some of the relationships to make it used, because it really truly is garbage in, garbage out. And if you don't have not only good quality governed data, but also if you don't have, like you said, the right so it needs to be integrated with the right stuff to even derive any kind of insight, right? So like if you have you gave the correlation example. If you have just like a gene and a phenotype, you have no idea what's causing that. If you start to build trend, if you start to do things like that, that's like in a genomics case, you start to actually get relationships, right? And the same is true for all of healthcare. If you just have like a blood test, I know somebody who's doing signal processing with hypertension. It's like people were getting diagnosed with high blood pressure because or like marked changes in their blood pressure, because the protocol with how one nurse would take their blood pressure and another nurse would take their blood pressure would be totally different, and that was actually the causative factor behind the difference. And so you have people changing their whole diets because of a human error.
Right.
And so data without context is not that useful.
Yeah, it's kind of also, I'm thinking about like just the action behind, what's the action that's taken? Because so much we find out is it requires behavior change. And like that becomes such the big problem, right? Like, so we were talking about Clayton Christensen earlier, and he's got his healthcare book called Innovator's Prescription. And it's an amazing book. It was written like about 15 years ago. And I forget, I think we may have talked about this book, you and I, before, like obviously not on the pod. And like there's a 2x2 in it that still this day lives rent free in my brain, which is like on the x-axis is behavior change required, and the y-axis is feedback loop. And so like the top left-hand corner is so like high feedback loop, low behavior change. So it's like farsightedness. You can't see. I put on glasses. I can see. That's easy. Top right-hand corner, high feedback loop and high behavior change. Type 1 diabetes. I have to do a lot of stuff, but if I don't, I'm in the hospital the next day or I die. Bottom right-hand corner, like low feedback loop, but low, high behavior change. That's the evil zone. Cardiac, obesity, all these kind of things. And it's always the question that we face is like, how do you get things out of that area?
Well, this is like, I have thoughts on this, obviously, but like doesn't mean that they'll work. But it's like it has to be gamified and incentivized. So instead of having, we were talking about sick care system, a healthcare system would incentivize with like rebates and like maybe rewards healthy behaviors, right, over time. And then Facebook uncovered this 2 decades ago. People respond to dopamine.
See, this is the part where I think that, excuse me, I think it's still challenging, because I've heard the gamification, the original experiment states, the gamification, I've heard that brought up a lot in health.
It's worked for some of my friends who wear their Apple Watches religiously, and I've seen like their whole life change because they share with their friends, and if they don't, there's like a social accountability and a gamification to it. Like, first of all, they want to get a streak longer than their best friend. Secondly, like
but are those the people that, the question I have is, are those the people that don't need it?
well, a couple of my friends, their whole health outlook changed because of this. So they're at least demonstrating a susceptible population to that needed it.
That's always been the question I've seen on a lot of these gamification type of things, is like the worried well, or like those kind of, is that it seems, I've not seen data, but like it seems to work on the people, like people who sign up that don't need it. I mean, that's one of the things like that's been so interesting with like why GLP-1s have been so powerful, is it actually moves things out of that box. It's less behavior change required. It's like, I just take a shot.
Well, this is the gamification plus incentive,
hmm
right? So the incentive, it can't happen right now because the cost is too high, right? So the cost to do preventative health stuff right now is still very high. AI might disrupt that. It might change or it will. In one way or another, it's going to change the whole game on that. So if we can have policy rewarding health in some way, and like, I'm usually a small government kind of person, but in this case, like, to answer your question, I do think there has to be a mix of grassroots and top down, so top down and bottoms up to support such a shift, right?
Well, it's funny. A good friend who I invest with a bunch made a comment that sat with me a lot, which is we always need to be when science becomes policy
Yeah.
is when when things get problem because then it locks in.
Yeah.
Because then it becomes very hard to change and one of the things that we found is that science changes all the nature of science is to change all the time.
I think
we end up incentivizing one thing versus the other.
I think the policy would have to stay broad and more focused on like dismantling the existing like sick care system, as it were, that keeps people sick.
Yeah. Then just don't. So then I think it's just don't incentivize.
And private institutions could incentivize employees. That's one of the things that I think some companies are doing. I know a couple of people in tech who they get a bonus if they do so many preventative health checks a year. Like the private companies can do it.
But I find those so like when I've been at companies like so I'm a big fan. I think of like the employer health like relationship is it's a quirk of history and like I think that we should really separate that. And I think there's some interesting bridges that are starting to happen with that.
Yeah.
Because I also think that the people who end up using those benefits back to like the people who actually need them don't really use them.
Yeah.
But
no, this is why I'm saying I agree with you on the gamification. It almost has to be financial incentive.
Yeah, no, but I agree. And there's maybe some interesting ways to
achieve that.
I don't like, I think having the employee, because it adds a really weird bedfellow to this whole stakeholder relationship. Because one of the problems that we have right now is the relationship of healthcare is you have the employer, you have the provider, and you have the payer. And by the way, the patient happens to sit over here.
Well, Progressive did it with the good driving bonuses, but I don't know anybody who uses that.
Well, but in that situation, though, even when we talk about Progressive and the good driving is it's Progressive and the car owner, right? Like, there's no other person there.
No, I know. So I was thinking through what my brain was going with you on
to your point, like, so, so since I've gotten, car insurance is a great example. So since I've gotten my driver's license, I've switched car insurance twice. Once when I got married because my wife had access to USAA, and then once a couple years ago because State Farm just had an unbelievable deal. Since I moved to Austin, I've switched health insurance 5 times because we happened to change jobs a bunch. Like I changed jobs, she changed jobs.
Yeah, because it's linked to the employer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, and so then the whole idea when people are like, well, we don't do preventative care or long-term care because there's no long-term incentive. Like the average time someone stays on insurance is like 18 months. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Versus like my car insurance, of course, they've had me for years and years. So it kind of makes sense from that perspective because in the car insurance scenario, I'm the customer.
I think this is still more of a data problem though, because like if data were easily transferable from insurance to insurance, you could still keep track of the like history in a better way that
but I'm not, but if I switch as the customer, anything that they do on a long term, they don't get the value.
And then like there's a whole debate of then does this get us back to like pre-existing condition? No, because it would be lifestyle. It's a really tricky thing because then how do you prove lifestyle? I don't know how we're gonna solve it. So why don't we pivot back to technology?
But at least that's my point. Is it actually has to be both because you want to enable business model shifts that go with the technology, right?
I think that they are in parallel. I've obviously taken the position that the technology shifts enable the business model shift sometimes. Like if you have, to your point earlier, right now there's a lot of attention on health. A lot of it's because of the technology shifts, because we have AI, we have all this disruptive stuff, and the model can't support it.
I'm going to 100% agree with you. The technology shift has been so great. The model, but if we have to do both.
We do.
Or if we just, the problem has always been in health, especially we only focused on the technology. We've gotten to the point now that if we do not do both simultaneously, like we won't get all of the goodness of the technological shifts that are happening.
So like with that in mind, so first of all, what would you say is the technology shift that you anticipate in the next 5 years that you'll be the most excited about? Just because this is something I want to ask you in line with our with the GenBio podcast being, on frontier tech and bio. Yep. And then I'm going to give you a bonus question then. What would be a potential corresponding policy shift to enable that to exist?
So, okay, I'm going to punt.
That's a loaded question,
Yes.
so punt the second one. But this is like, because I like the line of thinking, and I want to explore your brain on that one.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily I'm gonna take them both in a slightly different direction.
Okay.
So on the technology, it's not a singular. It's the word and.
Okay.
It is the stacking of all of these, right? It is, it's cheap, sequencing plus AI plus wearable, all the data sets coming together, us being able to understand it, all of these new classifications, the fact that we've had these quantum breakthroughs.
Yeah.
So it's the ability to, I'd say, all of that comes together, engineered biology.
Yeah, you spoke at Quantonation, right?
Or I attempted to keep up with quantum people that are way, way smarter than I am.
But you're looking across all the different
right. And so,
trends.
so I think it's the way I always kind of put that is we're living now in a world of atoms, bits, and intelligence. And it's that coming together. And then that opens up, as we said, cures, longevity, preventative, in this case, understanding way ahead of time. So nanobots, all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, I know that Peter Thiel liked to always say the 21st century, 20th century kind of went farther than the 20th century. And I really do feel, and I think maybe we'll look back and we'll say the singular moment was ChatGPT. Probably that'll be our whether it be COVID or on the negative side or ChatGPT as that's the flip moment. But I mean, if you just look at all the stuff that's happened in 2024, from the catch to, and I'm not a quantum expert in any sense, but if you hear Willow from Google a couple days ago, so they had, Google did something in quantum. They had a new quantum chip. They crossed some benchmark that would take standard computers. It was 1 septillion years to do, which is obviously longer than the known universe. So we're living in an amazing time, right? The future just got here.
I often try to remind people just in my day-to-day life that we live in an age of wonders.
Yes.
More than ever before.
And I see Waymos every day. I see robots running on the streets. This is the old
I'm happy to see the Waymos back.
Yeah.
And they went away for a little while.
No, it was cruises that were here. Those went away.
Oh, okay.
Now we got Waymos here. And of course, GM just gave up on Cruise.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought it was always Waymo.
It was cruises that were here. Those went away. Waymos are now here. And, but yeah, so they're all around. And so, we're, and then we got those delivery little robots that are running around.
Yeah, I see them on the sidewalk and I feel it's like WALL-E.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're designed to kind of give that. Yeah. So and then I drove down to Brownsville for Starship 6, and so we're the age of wonders. But we're kind of, it's an amazing time, and it was really funny. I don't know, Packy McCormick from he puts out the Not Boring News. He's a VC, kind of a big voice online, and every week he puts out just kind of here's amazing stuff that's happening, and it was just kind of funny. I was responding to him yesterday. I was like, what's amazing is all this stuff you put out is now starting to feel like that's just this week.
Yeah.
It's a standard week of all this amazing stuff that's happening. And so, yeah, so on one hand that I am really, really excited about just the convergence, all of it coming together because it just unlocks all of these different possibilities. On the policy side, so forget the business model and how we do this, but on the policy side,
because one question I usually ask is like, what do you see blocking that
Yeah.
future? And you've already said it's the policy.
well, no, the business model is usually what I say is like, how do we actually, the business of health is like, how do you because
Okay,
if
yeah,
you,
then expand into whichever direction.
well,
yeah,
both. So the business of health is usually what I'm seeing this is how do you make how do you make money? The problem is like we don't like a cure. The stock market would have because how do you make money on a cure? It's different. Like
Yeah.
the $1 billion drug model doesn't work on a cure, right? Those kinds of things. So we have to change the way we think about and monetize and do business models on that side. However, I will answer the policy side as a different question. Policy side is the FDA and the way it thinks and set up today was not built for this era. Like it was built, I mean, it came around from thalidomide in the 60s, and it was essentially built around I have a thing, okay, we're going to give me all the data around the thing, okay, go, I've now proved your claims around this, go ahead, go. Oh, you want new claims or you want to alter the thing? Good, start over, go through more trials, okay, we got it, and that would take 5 more years and go. Okay, we're in the era of, like, say, AI or software, okay, with this thing. Okay, well, I want it to change the second you approve it. We don't know how to do that. Or, you have the era of, like, personalized medicine. We get to the N of 1. You're not going to prove, you'd have to prove the platform, not the drug.
Okay.
So the FDA has to fundamentally change to be part of that era.
I want to dig into this because I recently went to a dinner with some different people in pharma, and I was talking about, AI and adoption, right? So, because of the nature of my company, and we're a tech stack shift. You talked about tech stack, right? We're a tech stack shift that leverages AI in this new era, and with pharma, they're incentivized not to make a change right now in anything because of the existing FDA approval processes. It can take their approval. Now they have, on average, a drug approval takes like 12 to 15 years, right?
And $1 billion.
Yeah. I think the patent only lasts 20 years, right? So they get 5 years of monetization on the drug. So if they change anything, they risk decreasing that amount of time because of how the FDA approval processes are.
Well,
and so you're
take it even further.
Yeah.
We have roughly somewhere 25 and 50 drugs a year
Yeah.
approved. Okay, so everything in what we're talking about in the tech stack goes amazing. This is where the policy, the business model, things come together. We now come up with these AI discovery platforms that create 1,000 new drugs a year.
Yeah.
The Pfizer's $1 billion drug business model doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't. None of it works. The approval processes don't work because the humans that have to approve them, and the different I guess constraints around it.
Right.
They no longer work with innovation. Right. Not easily. It's not an easy shift, and then it doesn't scale, and then on top of that, then it tanks existing pharma business models.
But then on the flip side of that, if we're producing 1,000 drugs a year, then the idea of like rare disease is gone. Because that's just the argument I always make in this case is like, when like rare disease is not a scientific problem.
Well,
rare disease is a business model problem. Rare disease is the fact that if I have 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people who have a disease, it doesn't make sense for pharma to try to spend $1 billion to create a drug around it.
Yeah.
But if we're in a world where, let's just say let's go all the way to the extreme. Every disease is a rare disease. Everything's an N of 1. Like that may be an extreme. We may never get there. But if everything is a small business model, so we've solved that, then the idea of ever worrying about rare disease goes away because then the science follows.
Well, so there's like, if we're actually going into illness and disease, there's like this is a whole slew of things that pop into my brain. Like, first of all, like preventative medicine. If we actually come up with a successful business model for that, most diseases will go away anyway,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like in the case of my issues, although I am in that like 0.1% of the normal curve distribution that like learned about genomics in order to get healthier, but I learned that I had some HLA mutations, human leukocyte antigen mutations, and I read all the literature that I could on how to get myself healthier, right? And I did. And which just, I'm an example of if the information is easily, and it wasn't, one of the changes wasn't a big change. Well, some people might argue that it was, but it was giving up gluten, right? Well, it's like, if you had to do one thing, some people can like, you talked about behavioral changes.
Right.
If we're able to create a system and a model where we look at the information about that individual holistically, their genome, their blood panels, like known medical history, things like that together in one like holistic picture, and prescribe one behavioral change, I bet a fair portion of the population would make one behavioral change.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's, oh, I have to give up gluten, I have to go on walks 20 minutes a day.
And you have a quick feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
I start feeling better immediately. I start whatever. Like that's always been the problem with a lot of the weight loss things. Is like if I eat the cookie or I go to the gym once and I don't see a result.
Well, like right now, people don't know what will work, and it's overwhelming. There's an analysis paralysis too. So it's like how if you go to the store and there are like 20 milks, which milk do I get? It's like way worse than that in health, because if you look up like, oh, how do I treat inflammation? There's like a million results. There's not like one cure all. And the problem and the reason why is that we're all variable. Like we're not all the same. And this is like where there are some blanket things you can do, and a lot of times they're really hard. Like in today's world, completely giving up processed food is not easy. Right. And so like, it's not like one shift that can change your outcome. Right. But if we were to understand more about that individual, maybe for some individuals for everyone, giving up processed foods would make you healthier. But like in the case of me, before I gave up processed foods, and I haven't completely given up processed foods even now. I'm speaking bad words to all my healthy friends by saying that. But I don't eat gluten, and I got markedly healthier. For someone else, that wouldn't work. Right? They've shown that people from different ethnic backgrounds have higher probability to have certain genes that make them more reactive negatively to either saturated fats or carbohydrates. This is a variable thing. Like two people aren't the same. And so until we can like unlock personalized medicine, we won't be able to do prevention. Right? So that answers your question about like incentives and things like that. Well,
and I think one of the big things with health is so many of other technologies, what really makes them take off, especially for consumers, is they essentially become invisible. You and I mean, we don't. Our phones just work. The microphones here work. The camera, like things just work.
Well,
I don't have to know how they work. Health, like we always have to think about it. I don't know how to make health invisible.
With nutrigenomics, you go to a restaurant and the menu auto caters to your genetic profile. That would be an example where it would become invisible, so to speak. And you'd have to actively go out of your way to order outside of your presets, and then that would make it invisible.
There is an interesting thing, to your point, is can you create, I'm thinking like AI agents that are linked with your health that essentially get out in front of you to make things invisible, to make it invisible.
That's the future of the bio AI market. I really believe that. So I gave that use case because this is something that I foresee existing in the future. Like it's where there is no longer it has to be supported by the right business models and the right incentive structure to enable these markets to integrate tightly. Like right now, they're separate. You have healthcare, you have wellness, and like gym and like things like that. You have dining and like food, and you have like grocery stores, beauty, whatever. They're all like separate markets, But like I call it like the future market bio AI. It's like there will be unification of these different areas of your life that have to be, though, supported by the offerings that are given to you. So like it would almost have to be like a restaurant would have to opt in to have their menu, like, or potentially, I mean, there are ways around that, but like to make it the most efficient, there has to be an opt-in to new business models, right?
Well, it's funny. I was just listening to BG Squared, Bill Gurley's podcast, and they had Satya from the CEO of Microsoft on, and they were actually talking about this exact thing, but like generally about agents.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because the model right now for agents, that kind of the big question is, can I just have an agent go book me travel? Like, go book me a trip to Hawaii at the cheapest rate. Go.
Yeah.
Like, done. And you can, in theory, think that, like, if everything's set up for that scenario, so a hotel's open, planes are open, car rent, whatever, is all open for that, that same infrastructure being open for that scenario would also be open for not only go book me a restaurant, but set up my menu the way I like it.
Yeah.
I don't eat gluten. I don't like milk. I like spicy food. I like highlight those, whatever it is, that, you could start like seeing that personalization, whatever it may be. And you have those agents running around that a lot of these things, to your point, just become invisible.
Yeah.
And I kind of have this, now it creates a weird, you think social media is a bubble? If I have my AI agents running around, if I really bubblified my world, that like everything is a little too much, I got away the serendipity.
Well, okay, so that's already a myth. Like we're already like if you look at chaos theory, like butterfly effect, we're already in bubbles in our day-to-day world. Only like we're not as much in control of the bubbles, in my opinion.
Okay.
We're bombarded with marketing. Like you mention, oh, I'm like craving strawberries today, and you'll see ads for strawberry Skittles or something on your phone.
Yeah.
Right? That's happening to us. With an agent, we can take control of it, and we can have it happen for us. We can insert more. We only feel like we have serendipity right now, is my feeling. And so I feel like there are various degrees to that are it's contained even more with existing marketing practices and things like that. You're in a bubble on social media, like you said. We're already in.
Whether I say, so we can take marketing or not, I just mean so you think of like just like luck surface area and creating that serendipity of just, I am, the people take marketing aside, the people I follow is just going to create the filter bubble at which I'm seeing things. If I'm creating agenic, or whatever the right word is there, a bubble of, here's my preference set for food or however I'm seeing, because I'm going to have them go out and set that up ahead of time. There just becomes the same kind of experience bubble I might be setting up.
You could bake that into the model. Surprise me sometimes, right? But like, because I think preferences versus health are two different things. So like for me, no matter how much I'm craving a certain type of bread, I'm not going to eat gluten because I'll get sick. Right. So when I'm thinking on the nutrigenomics side, I'm thinking, and I hear what you're saying. I was actually just like,
I was taking beyond health. Like I see you speaking of health, but yeah,
like a super macro of like, no, coincidence isn't real. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Like, because we live in.
Why is every conversation I have get back to agency? Like agency comes up so often, like last 3 weeks. So
I recently made the statement that the ultimate agency is accepting. Or acknowledging and accepting the absence of free will. And this has stirred so many people up.
No.
The ultimate agency. And it's because they're synonymous. And it's basically like, I'm both pro free will and somewhat deterministic. Because I work in the realm of biology, and also like we're constrained in like a physical environment. We make actions that affect us like a decade later that we don't even realize, like chaos theory, right? So I
We
have
do make act. Oh my God, no. Yeah,
we're
we make
bounded.
we make
There's
decisions that affect us
it,
later, but we still make choices.
it's bounded free will. That's what I'm saying. So the ultimate agency is it's bounded. The is accepting anyway. That I said that mainly to spark philosophical thought on it, but I do think often about agency and like the level to which we have agency.
I'm going to do a whole podcast on agency and this like, stuff at some
Yeah.
point because it keeps coming up and I keep having this debate now.
Well, and it's like, okay, so we make choices. That we do make choices. Where does the choice begin? So you talked about like, is the serendipity going to be taken out of life if you put presets of what types of food you want to eat in an app? Well, you're choosing whether or not to put a preset. So it's still choice. So it's still leaving it up to the individual, like how they can go in at any time and add another cuisine type, or they could add, I think consumer demand will drive that experience.
Sure.
And then there will be we'll see like majority and tail usages on how that technology is like utilized, I guess, in real time, and it'll drive the trends. But yeah, I think it gets scary. Like, but we already have our behavior being influenced. Only there's not transparency so much in the technical layperson of what's going on, right? I think a positive of AI becoming more available to everyone is that it's becoming more transparent, that that there is this set of logic that is guiding things that are catered to us, and I think democratizing access to that technology, like having your own AI agent, if ethically governed, and that's a whole other debate. If ethically
Yes.
governed actually increases the agency to the individual.
What do you mean by ethically governed? We're about to go down a rabbit hole.
Okay. I just had to check the time.
Yeah. So I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to really disagree on this.
Okay. AI ethics and security is something that so you can't secure LLMs necessarily. Like like personal information. This is known once it goes into the model, once it feeds into the model, it exists there, right? And so there are two elements of governance. One is like governing how information enters into the model in the first place, right? To affect behavior, to affect to like protect individuals from preventing personal information from getting integrated into like output, and like I think there was a tech company that had IP information leaked that way, and then there was like a young woman who was pregnant and her parents found out through recommendations, and this is like the
old like Target thing where like they sent her like a coupon because of what she bought. Okay, yeah.
So there's the personal side of it, and then
that wasn't AI. That was like there was just a
but it feeds into conversations of AI ethics. That example. There's the personal information side of it, which is like governed. It has to be in order for people's rights to be protected and their information. Then there's like what foundational rules are we going to base our AI models off of? So it's like from an ethics standpoint. So I had a conversation recently where someone essentially used the analogy of if we achieve AGI, like the technology is neither good nor bad. It's like a little child. It's like when you teach a child like right from wrong, that child grows up like accordingly. So we had this whole discussion on how would you like what if you had to create like a 10 commandments of of AI, like what would you feed into them? It was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And like the one that I came up with, so this is the other side of AI ethics. The one that I came up with was don't infringe on the autonomy of others, which is really hard when we're talking about agency in the context that where do you draw the line?
Right.
And then even another area of AI governance that I often think about is like model governance and bias prevention and detection. Right. So I just gave you 3 branches that we have a few minutes left. You can pick on any thread from
Right.
those 3.
Well, I mean, come on, the bias protection, we saw what happened with Gemini.
Okay.
Right. And how crazy that went. And, when you say, like, please, show me the founding fathers. And we're like, you made, black founding fathers. Like, so those things go absolutely crazy. But when you're putting in some of these things, like, so whose rules?
Exactly.
Whose 10 Commandments, right?
Yeah.
So,
well,
and
exactly.
so the top-down rule making. I mean, the way I always kind of put it is like I'd much rather have, and this gets into like the open source versus close things. I'd much rather have, I think we're in a, if you have one AGI, then you have 2 possible outcomes, right? It's either good or bad, right? It's either going to be helpful or it's the Terminator, right? It's bad,
Yeah.
right? Or if we're in the situation of like, what if we have 1,000 AGIs? That's probably a better scenario, because if there are good ones and bad, like, we'll be in a situation that's a much more positive scenario in that, because then it isn't controlled, because then now you're in the situation of the people who are going to be in control. You're always going to agree, because just in general in history, the people who you agree with will not always be in power.
What if 1,000 AGIs could I was going to ask probably a weird question.
If they all team up?
Well, no,
Is that what you said?
no, I wasn't going to go there. It's what like, not team up, but what if they end up like if they in any way integrated or became like part of the same model, then I was going to say it just comes
team up.
It comes. Oh yeah, I know. I was thinking. That wasn't the word. I was going to say it goes back to one model.
Right. Team up. That's what
I know. I didn't think about it. When you said team up, I thought of them.
Yeah.
When you said team up, I was thinking of it still as individuals, and then but yes, team up. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. But there's no point going there. Okay, who gives the 10 Commandments? I mean,
that's the point. Like,
I know.
yeah.
No. They have to be broad, but yeah, who gives them? And it goes back to policy, unfortunately. And like, again, I'm a proponent of small government, but like, you talk about something as critical as AI and like AGI, and we screw that up, it could be bad. So we do need to take it seriously, and at least put now.
You're assuming that the dictate from that is going to be not screwed up.
I actually argued the opposite in the other discussion when I was asked to raise my hand if I feared like the government dictating policy or not more, and like I feared the government dictating policy more.
When we have technological policy, it results in one of 2 things.
Yeah.
Consistently every single time.
Yeah.
Regulatory capture or definite innovation.
So I'm honestly just like taking the opposite stance of you for the sake of the discussion right now. But I actually both the consensus in the room is that the extreme in either direction is bad. How you balance it, I think, is an ongoing debate among some of the most, brilliant minds in the world right now of like, okay, we shouldn't dictate what can be done. I think it's more like we should dictate what absolutely should not be done, but it has to be globally agreed upon. Otherwise, if we in the United States regulate AI, other countries are just going to go and
look what's happening. I mean, look what's happening in Europe right now, right? Like the perfect example being with the last couple of days, like OpenAI is doing their 12 Days of Christmas, and they just released Sora. And I did my first try, and I sort of got everything out of a nightmare, so I'm not very good at prompting video. But like Europe, like Sam Altman was like, well, we can't give it to Europe because of all the AI regulations.
Yeah. Europe is a great example. And then like, okay, so we're here in the United States, like we're putting in regulation on germline editing, but other countries don't have that regulation. Like this is a biology example. it gets weird. It's like we either have to come to some sort of global consensus, which how the heck do you do that? That was another discussion. It's not easily achievable. Exactly. Or we don't regulate it. And like, I guess it has to kind of be more of like a staged approach. Like we probably shouldn't regulate anything until the point where it becomes dangerous. But the counter argument to that is by then it'll be too late. So we need to have like a plan. Somebody needs to create an action plan. Maybe Doge will do it. How do you feel about the like Doge?
I'm extremely excited.
Yeah, me too.
I think that we're in for a moment of as a mindset change of a, because I think that we talk about like what happened to X and everyone's like, oh, the 80% of people left, but like if I but it was Twitter's transformation to X and the amount of the change that's happened with Grok and the innovation mindset that's gone on there. And so I think it's actually very exciting. And I think that it's not just about efficiency, it's about innovation, it's about changing. I think that we talk about like the change in the way the FDA thinks and the opening up of all these kind of new possibilities. So I think it's a very exciting thing. And I think there's all these kind of possibilities out there of like changing the way that we think about health. Do I agree with everything that everyone said? No, of course not, because like that's kind of the way. And I think there's lots of different opportunities out there. I think there's a lot of good people that are coming in, and I think that there's just it's an interesting time. I think there's real like 21st century technology, as we said, that are coming into this stuff, and I think we can really think about what that means. I mean, you and I both know, Eli Overby, and she was just on my podcast. She was in your first episode too. Yeah. One of the things we were talking about actually was the whole, genetic modification for people coming on Mars.
Yeah.
And like, if that's what we're gonna do that, and what does that mean for Earth? But it's funny because the whole debate we were getting, I was like, well, maybe it's a positive thing here. Yeah. And how do we think about that, right?
So my stance on that was one of like, if people are going to colonize Mars, just so you know my stance, they shouldn't be doing it and suffering. if that's like horrible. So if they need genetic modifications to thrive and persist on Mars and not suffer, then they should be it should be explored. Because if we, for all we know, then even with human intervention there, the environment is going to be, given what we know, the environment is going to be very different. And the mutations that have been selected for, and the variants and the traits for people to live and thrive here on Earth are possibly going to be different from what will enable people to live and thrive on Mars. And Elia and I got into the point where we were saying, is this going to be a speciation event?
Actually, that's where we got to.
Okay.
Yeah, same exact thing we got to. And so the way that I talked about it, and my stance on some of this, like especially when it gets into children, and like I have kids, I'm done having kids, but like the way I told it is it still had to be my children. So like the example being like, I have brown hair, my wife has brown hair, so the idea of like us choosing genetic modification to have blonde-haired children would be weird. Mm-hmm. So like that didn't make any sense to me. Like it still has to be like my children, but like
some people would disagree with you on that.
No, I'm saying this is I'm saying where I was standing for me in this kind of sense. That was like for me it was like ignoring disease and like obviously if I had like a carrier for disease, like get rid of that.
Have you seen that? Just sorry to interrupt you, but have you seen that Twilight Zone episode where the sun is getting hotter, and so the aliens bring to humanity a mutation where they have like this aluminum-looking skin. It's like reflective.
I haven't.
I mean, like that just popped into my head. It's like you might choose if you're living on Mars,
right? And
you get there and you're looking, you're like us, right? And it's painful. You might surely elect for a child that has like a different like melanin structure,
right?
Or like,
I was taking, so this was on Earth. The Mars thing was a different question, but for me, I said my thought process was it was still my children.
Yeah.
And that was the whole thing, because the idea of like the hair color thing was like, brown hair, brown. I was like blonde. I was like, you start being like, it's not my child.
Well,
Like, yeah, of course. And the joke that she made, of course, was that then my kids are just going to dye their hair just to drive me crazy, anyways, right? So
yeah. Okay. So the hair thing, though, I'm gonna lean into that and say, like, a lot of times there's this like essence that we ascribe to it being our child, because two people can have recessive traits and like have it right.
yes, but it was an easy example.
Well,
is the
no,
point.
I'm gonna lean into it. So like that essence, so to speak, it would be like maybe more like your personality or like how you see the world, or some traits that are not as easily observable as hair color. But the funny thing is that we now know that genes carry multiple functions. This is like, again, this is a tie back to Generate and like some of the things that we want to help unlock more of. And that like traits related to like phenotypic traits like hair color and things like that, like genes that are related to those traits might have other functions on things like personality and things like that. Kind of don't want to like people to lean too much into stereotypes on the basis of that statement, but like they have studied that it's related.
Right.
And so it's kind of interesting. Like it could be polygenic, it could be gene linkage, and there could be like that different genes have multiple different functions and cause like a single gene that's related to hair color. I'll give the redheaded gene thing that they did a study that red-haired people are more likely to get angry. They anger faster. There's like a functional reason why, I forget what it is, but there's a functional reason why red-haired people get angry faster, given the MCR1 mutation that causes red hair. It does some other function. It's really interesting that actually by opting to modify a gene for hair color, you may in fact be making your child essence-wise, personality-wise, all these other things less like you.
Sure.
Temperament-wise, in ways that we don't understand yet.
I'm sure I would think we would not making these changes till we'd actually we knew what we were doing. But
well, no, that's the problem.
Yes.
So this is often, again, this is like another one of my common talking points if we want to boil down to the things that I say repetitively. But we're already doing it. There are embryo selection companies.
Yes.
And they're making decisions to select for or rule out embryos on the basis of partial information. And so we really do, circling all the way back to the beginning of the conversation with like the technological advancements that are available today. I mean, the biggest one being data, right? Because if you have better quality data, you get better outputs.
Yeah.
You train the models better on, and like, and this also addresses the question about AI ethics. I mean, data quality and bias detection, like more important, like Gemini example, that was bad. You don't want to put bias protection to that level in the model's outputs, because then you won't get what you asked for.
Right.
What you want to do is you want to govern with like preventative measures the data that goes into the model, going back to that vein, right? Because then you get better outputs regardless, right? Because it's trained on more accurate and unbiased data set, maybe more representative data set, right? And so if you think of it, and then your outputs still make sense. Like you'll get an actual picture of the founding fathers.
Right.
right. So it's like going back to that. I do think that we are at a point in time where the way that the data is created, the quality of the data created, and the standardization around like how that data is treated prior to being utilized in a technological standpoint is already but going to increasingly become the differentiating factor. So even when we get into these future AI use cases, like health AI, bio AI, and you think about these agents that can help make your life better, well, if I gave the example of the guy who got his blood pressure done laying down and sitting up and standing up one time, or whatever, I don't know the difference, but
yeah.
Highly variable blood pressure, same health, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have situations like that, like not addressed, or at least not processed out, or like highlighted or indicated, then the AI outputs will be useless. If you put like, oh, I want food recommended for my health, and you get miscategorized as having high blood pressure because someone did a different protocol, then you're not actually eating food that's good for you, right? So I think what we'll find is that the methods of capturing the data, what data is used, and like governing what data goes into the AI agents is going to answer a lot of the questions that we went back and forth on in the podcast.
Data's the new oil.
Yeah, you going back to what you said. One I guess final question. We actually have 10 more minutes if you. Okay. What are you? Okay, so you didn't answer my question because you answer. I asked you what is the thing that you're most excited about, and you said everything. I know.
What's wrong with that?
I know. But if you had to like think of like yourself, like put yourself back like in the state of wonder that you get in when you're like a little kid and you get excited. I mean, it's about to be Christmas time, so like if you could have a Christmas wish.
You're asking that to the Jew, but yes, go ahead.
Yes, that's true. Okay, if you could have a Hanukkah wish.
Okay.
What would you choose?
It's still the and. I mean,
okay, but like no, like a shiny object. Like would it be Jarvis?
Well, okay, so
what would you be most excited about in the future?
Hold on. From a narrative perspective, actually, this is the ask I'm going to have from a narrative perspective on AI. Is the point that you just made is why did we go from Terminator to her and skip over Jarvis? So the shiny object I would like from the AI narrative is, can we get back to Jarvis? Yeah. Is like I was reading this the other day. It was like in TechCrunch. It was like this person wants to write and create and take the dystopian out of her, and I was like, we don't need to. We had Jarvis. Why did we skip over this?
Yeah.
So that would be the shiny object. I want is like getting back to this like positive case for or this positive like narrative analogy on AI, and stop like immediately always jumping to the negative analogies. Even we're like, well, we can have a positive case of that or this. Like we have one. Like I know there was Hal. I know there's Terminator. I know there's her. But we do have these positive cases. We have Wall-E. We have Jarvis. Like go to those.
Star Trek future, right? Yeah, I mean, I think this way. I think Austin is unique. Going back to, we both are here in Austin. Austin is unique in its mindset of techno-optimism. Techno-optimism, whatever the word is. Austin is like singular from the different places that I've been on its levels of that.
So somebody asked me this, actually on a podcast I was on recently about holograms, like, what does the city want from you? And I'd answered it that, and it seems to be, I think, somewhat more of a recent thing in Austin, or maybe it's within the first principles, was Austin asks, what's your mission? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing. I mean, the companies that are being attracted here, the people that are being attracted here, that seems to be it more is it's back to this world-changing mission kinds of questions. Mm-hmm. And that goes from everyone from Elon and the companies that he's bringing here to things like Generate, to like those kind of companies. Like people are coming here going like, you said, like technological, I want to come here to come and change the world. Yeah. And I think that, and it's coming from a, not to say want to build the next SaaS company, but like I want to come and build something great to do that. Yeah.
I think a lot of the people here want humanity to thrive, want human life to be better, want the world to be a livable place, want to explore the galaxy, even if the world, and even if the world is not a livable place, especially if the world is not, but even if the world is a livable place, just explore wonders, keep consciousness alive, persist humanity, right? Like I think that is the underlying theme here more than at like micro levels of, okay, like day to day, how do we make life better? You talked about all these wellness clinics that are just now everywhere, longevity use cases that are now everywhere here. Yeah.
Some have been built by people who've been here for a long time. Some have been built by people who have moved here. Like it's this kind of all these different verticals of it. And that's one of the things that's really interesting is it's not being defined by one single vertical. Like it's being defined by a whole bunch of different things. You've got big in defense tech, you've got big in bio and health, you got big in space, you got big in like they're all of these different things, and then they all kind of crisscross in different ways, which is becoming really interesting. And so that you have really weird connections of people, which then create really weird new companies that almost couldn't exist anywhere else because who knew the quantum and drug people could get together and create who knows what.
Yeah. Yeah, I just connected Elia with a friend of mine trying to disrupt the pharma industry, make cheaper drugs, talking about doing trials in space.
Yes, and that's
Right?
yeah, space bio is happening more, and I know there's people doing that over in Florida, and and some of that's happening here, and yeah, so lots of really interesting stuff happening.
It is. It's really cool, and Austin is kind of representing one of the critical nexus points for that, I think, in the country. From my perspective as well. Another friend of mine owns a local like wellness center called Sapien Center. You've met him, Brian, and then his co-founder Draco. They were saying recently that Draco had this theory that all the different like canned beverage companies of different like healthy types of water all come to Austin to start. It's just another weird example. And then,
well, I was at Nutribolt's headquarters like yesterday.
Yeah.
And if you didn't realize, like they're one of the largest unicorns in Austin.
Huh.
Yeah, they're like.
What are they? Are they water?
They're
are they one of the waters?
No, they're consumer packaged good protein shakes and all those kinds of like and sports drinks and all those kind of things. And I think last I saw, I was looking up, it's like, they're $3-point-something billion in valuation. Like when you normally think of tech innovation center, like you don't immediately go to like a CPG. Like so you have everything from like a CPG to a like this year alone you had like Saronic, which is a autonomous naval drones, to Ninja One, which is cybersecurity, to like. What a weird mix of, different types of companies that are here, that are large, that are all this kind of stuff. And so that it just creates a really new and dynamic. And I do think one of the things that looking back is, I think there was, the era that you and I kind of came here. I think it was like 2000, 2004 was like an era. Like it was the COVID wave era of people kind of coming to Austin. And it feels like we kind of have had, I don't know where you want to draw the line, but it feels like we're entering another era and wave.
It's a cultural movement, though, that's driving the innovation to center here. I think. So it is. It's a positive techno-optimism. There are art movements here, spiritual movements. It's like the accumulation of those together. Have you read The Golden Braid? It's like it's this idea that science, spirituality, art, all these concepts, they all derive, like physics, they all end up going to the same like core meaning of everything, and patterns are detected at the same time, like Fibonacci, things like that, across what's the word I'm looking, practices. Anyway, like it's it's kind of, Austin is embodying this idea that multi-dimensional movements occur.
Yep.
Right. It's not like you have a place of like advancement or awakening and it only happens on one subject, right? No, it's like it happens multidimensionally. So we have wellness here, we have art here, and we have tech necessarily, because that's how like a cultural shift happens.
Yeah, I mean, so I always talk about one of the superpowers of Austin is that we leverage the power of and that and is all of those things, right?
So we're getting back to it's everything for Hanukkah.
Yeah, it's everything for Hanukkah. Exactly. Yes, that's perfect. Yes, I want it all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I always find that by the end of, you were talking about, you get to agency in every podcast lately. I always get to consciousness. Some way or another. We touched on it a little bit. I always get to consciousness and some sort of techno-optimism. So, yeah.
Not bad place to stay at.
Not a bad place to end.